The spaceship hovered quietly above the luminous surface of Zyrathia, a planet of swirling green clouds and glittering oceans. Its cities floated above the ground like islands in the sky, connected by beams of light that shimmered in the sunlight. Captain Elias Harper, the human ambassador, stared in awe through the viewing window. He had traveled across hundreds of light years to reach this world, yet nothing could have prepared him for its beauty. Elias was chosen for this mission because of his reputation on Earth. He was calm under pressure, quick to learn new cultures, and most importantly, he was curious about other life forms. Now, as the first human ever to step foot in the palace of the Zerathian queen, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. A panel beside the door lit up, and a smooth voice said, "Ambassador Harper, the Queen's attendants await your arrival in the Great Hall. Please prepare for your introduction." Elias took a deep breath and adjusted his formal uniform. It was simple compared to the ceremonial outfits of the Zerathians, but it had been carefully designed to respect their customs. The uniform was plain white with silver trim and a small emblem of Earth stitched over his heart. When the doors opened, Elias stepped into the Great Hall. The room was enormous, with ceilings so high that they seemed to vanish into mist. Light floated in from unknown sources, casting soft patterns across the walls. Dozens of attendants stood in a circle, their eyes turning to examine him. Each Zerathian had smooth, shimmering skin, long limbs, and faces that could shift expressions subtly, a skill their species had perfected over centuries. Elias bowed, a gesture he hoped conveyed respect. Immediately, he noticed the subtle tension among the attendants. Some nodded slightly at his bow, while others exchanged brief glances that hinted at disagreement. He could not yet understand the language of their expressions, but he sensed that the smallest action could carry weight. One attendant, taller than the others and wearing a robe of deep violet, stepped forward. Her voice, translated into a calm English accent by a small device Elias wore, said, "Ambassador Harper, you honor us with your presence. The Queen requests your attendance for the ceremonial greeting." Elias nodded and followed. The attendants formed a path for him to walk, their movements synchronized and graceful. Every step he took echoed lightly on the polished floor. He noticed how carefully they adjusted their positions as he passed. He guessed it was not merely protocol, it was a competition. Each attendant wanted to demonstrate that they were the one most capable of serving the Queen. As they walked, Elias tried to take in his surroundings. The walls were decorated with floating sculptures, moving slowly like clouds. Strange plants hung from the ceiling, their leaves glowing softly. The air was scented with something sweet and unfamiliar. He realized that even the atmosphere of the palace was designed to impress and perhaps test newcomers. Finally, they arrived at a set of double doors carved from crystal. The attendant in violet motioned for Elias to enter first. He stepped through, and the doors closed silently behind him. Inside was the ceremonial bathing chamber. The room was even more magnificent than the Great Hall. Pools of water glowed with bioluminescence and steam rose in gentle waves. Lamps floated in mid-air, casting patterns that danced across the walls. Elias stopped for a moment, trying to understand what he was seeing. The attendants watched him carefully, their expressions unreadable. Some shifted slightly, adjusting their robes or the placement of small trays filled with oils and cloths. Elias realized that he was being observed as part of their ritual, that even his presence had become a stage. The violet-robed attendant spoke again. "Ambassador, the Queen's bathing ceremony is both a test and an honor. It is rare for a visitor to receive this treatment. Our role is to ensure your comfort and safety, while also demonstrating our skill. You will find our methods unusual." Elias nodded politely. He had read about Zerathian rituals before arriving, but nothing in the reports truly prepared him for this. He trusted the attendants, but he also understood that he was now part of a delicate social dance. One wrong move, one misunderstood gesture could offend them, or worse, the Queen. The attendants guided him to a central platform above the pools. A series of steps descended into warm, glowing water. As he stepped forward, one attendant poured water over his hands, Another adjusted the temperature, and a third presented a small cloth. Each motion was precise, yet Elias could sense an undercurrent of rivalry. The attendants were subtly competing to see who could impress the queen most. Through their service to him, Elias smiled slightly, trying to ease the tension. "This is incredible," he said softly. "I've never seen anything like this." Some attendants' faces softened at his words, but others flicked quick glances at each other, as if deciding who deserved credit for his compliment. Elias realized that even simple appreciation could fuel the competition. As the ceremony began, the attendants took turns performing their tasks. One massaged his shoulders with delicate precision. Another rinsed his hair using a glowing liquid that smelled faintly of flowers. Elias tried to focus on the experience, but he could not ignore the subtle exchanges happening around him. Whispered comments, tiny adjustments, and glances filled the space with an invisible tension. At one point, a small splash of water accidentally fell on the attendant in violet. Her eyes narrowed, and another attendant quickly stepped forward to smooth the situation, muttering something in their language. Elias watched, fascinated. He realized that even a minor accident could shift the balance of favor among the attendants. Despite the tension, Elias found himself enjoying the experience. He had encountered competitive teams before, but never one so devoted to ceremony and subtlety. He noticed the care with which each attendant moved, how they anticipated his needs before he even asked. Their skill was extraordinary, even if the rivalry simmered beneath the surface. After a while, the ritual began to change. The attendants started to subtly demonstrate their strengths. One applied scented oils with patterns that seemed to float in the air. Another recited ancient proverbs while performing their duties, and a third demonstrated a gentle, precise stretching technique. Elias watched in awe. Each action was designed to impress the queen as well as show their mastery. He began to understand something remarkable. The attendants were not only serving him, they were performing a kind of dance, a display of skill, honor, and devotion. And through it all, they were measuring him as well, gauging how a human might respond to their ways. By the end of the ceremony, Elias felt a mix of exhaustion and admiration. The attendants had worked tirelessly, competing and cooperating at the same time. He realized that his presence alone had sparked a unique challenge. Even a simple human could become a center of attention, a catalyst for rivalry and respect. The final drops of water were poured. The violet-robed attendant spoke again. "Ambassador Harper, you have endured the ritual with patience and grace. The queen will see your character reflected in your behavior here." Elias smiled, bowing once more. "Thank you. I only hope to understand your people better and to show that humans are worthy of friendship." The attendants nodded, their expressions a mix of pride and relief. Elias could tell that some still competed silently, each claiming in their own way that they had performed the best service. But now there was also a sense of recognition. He had observed them, and he had valued their effort. As he was led out of the chamber and toward the queen's presence, Elias felt a surge of confidence. Humanity had entered the interstellar stage not with weapons or power, but with curiosity, respect, and a willingness to engage in unfamiliar rituals. He knew that earning the Zyrathians' trust would be a long journey, but he also realized that his simple human qualities, honesty, humor, and kindness, could be as powerful as any advanced technology. The doors opened, and beyond them lay the queen's throne room. Light shimmered across 1,000 floating panels, and the air seemed to hum with energy. Elias took a deep breath, ready for the next step in his journey. He had survived the first challenge, and in doing so, he had shown that humans could face alien traditions with courage and grace. Even in a world where washing one's back could spark rivalry, humanity had made its mark. The queen's attendants guided Elias Harper deeper into the glowing palace. After passing the first ritual chamber, they entered another hall, even more radiant than before. Here, the ceiling sparkled like a star field, and soft mist floated along the floor. The air smelled faintly of flowers and sea breeze, a calming but strange combination. Elias looked around with quiet wonder. "Your palace is beyond anything I've seen," he said gently. The attendants bowed slightly, though their expressions shifted in subtle ways. Some seemed pleased with his words, others seemed unsatisfied, as if they believed he should have complimented them more directly. Elias noticed, but he stayed calm. He had been trained for diplomacy, and he understood that every word could carry hidden meaning here. The violet-robed attendant, who seemed to hold the highest status, stepped closer. Her voice, soft but firm, came through his translator. Ambassador. Harper, the next stage of the greeting is the ceremony of purity. It is tradition for honored guests to be cleansed in the pools of the Queen. This is not merely for the body, it is also for the spirit. By receiving this ceremony, you show trust. By accepting our service, you allow us to prove our devotion. Elias nodded respectfully. I will trust your ways. I am honored to take part. The attendants led him onto a circular platform that overlooked a wide, glowing pool. Steps descended into the water, which shimmered with light. At the edges of the platform stood tall glass vessels filled with scented oils. Trays of delicate cloths, crystal combs, and carved brushes rested on stands. Everything gleamed, as if prepared for a performance. Elias realized the attendants were not just helpers. They were performers, each movement part of a silent competition. He could feel it in the way they glanced at one another, as if every gesture was being measured. Two attendants approached first, bowing gracefully. One poured warm water from a golden pitcher onto Elias's hands. Another dried them gently with a cloth that glowed faintly blue. Their motions were careful, elegant. Yet even in such small acts, Elias sensed rivalry. Each tried to make her motion smoother, her smile more graceful, her posture more flawless. As Elias stepped into the pool, more attendants moved in unison, though not perfectly. One leaned closer, her hand guiding the water just before another could do the same. A faint flicker of irritation appeared on the second's face. Elias, trying not to laugh, thought, "Even washing my hands feels like a contest here." When he lowered himself into the glowing pool, the ceremony began in full. Attendants surrounded him at different distances, forming a living circle. Some knelt by the water's edge, holding jars of oils. Others stood behind him, holding towels. A few remained farther away, reciting short chants in their melodic language. The first attendant to act was the violet-robed one. She touched the water with her hand, then spread it across Elias's shoulders in smooth strokes. Her touch was precise, like an artist painting a canvas. Another attendant quickly followed, sprinkling a few drops of oil that released a gentle fragrance. Elias inhaled deeply. It smelled like earth forests after rain, though he knew it came from some alien flower. As the ritual continued, the competition grew clearer. Each attendant tried to add something extra to stand out. One sang softly while washing his arms, her voice like flowing water. Another traced small patterns on his back with oil, designs that glowed faintly in the air before fading. A third knelt closer, offering him a fruit that sparkled with tiny lights, claiming it would cleanse the breath. Elias accepted everything politely. He smiled, thanked them softly, and tried to stay calm. But inside he was both amused and fascinated. Never in his life had he been the center of so much careful attention. Yet it wasn't only kindness. He could feel the invisible battle between the attendants. At one point, a small accident broke the harmony. One attendant, moving quickly to pour water across Elias's shoulders, splashed a bit too strongly. The water spilled and touched the robe of another attendant standing close by. The second attendant's face stiffened. She gave a small bow, but her eyes flashed with quiet anger. The first attendant quickly lowered her head, apologizing in the Zyrathian tongue. But the tension lingered. The others exchanged tiny looks, almost smiles, as if enjoying the mistake. Elias noticed all of it. He had seen soldiers quarrel silently during missions, and this was no different. Rivalry often hid behind polite masks. Here, though, it was dressed in ceremony and elegance. The Queen's attendants did not raise their voices, but their rivalry grew more visible as the ceremony went on. One moved closer than necessary, trying to claim the most important tasks. Another tried to interrupt, placing a towel in Elias's hands before the previous gesture had finished. Their motions were graceful yet layered with hidden arguments. Elias decided to stay calm and not interfere. Instead, he observed. He realized that the attendants' competition was not only about him, it was about the queen. By serving him with skill, they hoped to prove themselves worthy in her eyes. To them, this ceremony was not simple service. It was honor, reputation, and pride. Still, the human ambassador could not resist a small smile. He thought, back on Earth, people compete in sports or business. Here, they compete over who washes best. Strange, but somehow familiar. The ceremony lasted a long time. Each stage seemed carefully planned. First came the washing of hands, then arms, then shoulders and back. After that, oils were applied, followed by light massage. Each step gave the attendants a chance to show their grace. Elias began to relax into the experience even though he remained cautious. He noticed that the oils warmed his skin gently, leaving it refreshed. The water seemed to carry a soft energy, almost like electricity, though it was not unpleasant. He felt lighter, as if the ritual truly did have a cleansing effect. But the rivalry reached its peak during the final stage. The attendants were meant to wash his back together, a task of cooperation. Yet instead of harmony, their rivalry exploded silently. One moved first, her strokes careful and smooth. Another interrupted, layering oil over the same area, as if correcting the first. A third leaned in quickly, rinsing the space with water before the others could finish. The result was awkward. Elias tried not to laugh, but it was almost comical. Their movements became faster, each one determined to show she was the most skilled. The attendants did not speak loudly, but their quick glances and sharper motions revealed their frustration. Finally, Elias spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You all are very skilled. I am grateful for your care. Please do not rush. Every one of you is doing well." The attendants froze for a moment. His words seemed to ripple through them. Some looked surprised, others lowered their eyes. No, one had expected the human to speak during the ritual, much less to calm their hidden quarrel. The violet-robed attendant slowly straightened. She looked at him with an expression that mixed respect and curiosity. Then she said softly, "You notice more than we expected, Ambassador Harper." Elias smiled politely. "I may not understand your traditions fully, but I can see effort. On Earth, when people work together, harmony is valued more than rivalry." A quiet murmur passed among the attendants. For the first time, they seemed less like competitors and more like listeners. The ceremony ended shortly after. The attendants dried Elias with glowing towels, each moving with more calm than before. The rivalry had not vanished, but it had softened. The human's words, simple yet direct, had touched them. When Elias stepped out of the pool, he felt refreshed, not only in body, but in spirit. He had faced the ceremony of purity, and though it was filled with hidden tension, he had navigated it without offense. More than that, he had shown the attendants a new idea, that cooperation could be as honorable as competition. As the attendants bowed deeply, the violet-robed one spoke again. "Ambassador, you have passed the ceremony. The Queen will be told of your patience, your respect, and your insight. Few guests notice what lies beneath our rituals. You have seen it clearly." Elias bowed in return. "Thank you. I only hope to understand your people better, and perhaps we may learn from each other." The attendants rose, their faces softer now. As they led him toward the next chamber, Elias could not help but think how strange it was. A simple act of washing had revealed so much about their culture, and had given him a chance to share something deeply human. The path ahead was still long, but already he had earned a kind of respect, not through power but through observation, patience, and kindness. Humanity, he thought, might just have a place here, and somewhere behind him, even as they walked in silence, he could sense the attendants still wondering who had done the best. The rivalry had not ended, it had only changed shape. Elias Harper followed the attendants through another corridor of the Queen's palace. The walls shimmered with flowing patterns, like water moving inside crystal. The air carried a faint humming sound, as if the entire palace was alive. Elias walked calmly, though inside he felt a quiet tension. He had completed the ceremony of purity, but he knew that his journey was not finished. The attendants still glanced at him with sharp eyes, each one trying to read his smallest reactions. Their rivalry had softened after his gentle words, but it had not disappeared. Instead, Elias could sense it shifting, waiting for the next chance to rise. They entered a chamber shaped like a wide circle. Pillars of light rose around the edges, glowing softly. At the center stood a low table covered with trays of fruit, cups, combs, and shimmering cloths. It was not a dining hall nor a ritual bath. It felt more like a stage prepared for something unusual. The violet-robed attendant stepped forward. "Ambassador Harper," she said, her voice steady. "You have accepted our cleansing ritual. Now you will receive the service of honor. Each of us will show our devotion in our own way. What you say and do will be remembered by the Queen." Elias nodded politely. "I understand. Please, continue." The attendants formed a circle around him. Their movements were silent and graceful, but their eyes revealed hidden fire. This was their chance to prove themselves, not only to the Queen but also to each other. The first attendant to act was a tall figure with robes of green. She lifted a crystal cup filled with golden liquid and held it out to Elias. "Ambassador," she said, "this is nectar from the highest peaks of Zirathia. It is said to clear the mind and strengthen the heart." Elias accepted the cup carefully. He took a small sip. The taste was sweet at first, then turned cool like mint. He smiled. "It is refreshing. Thank you." The green-robed attendant's eyes brightened, but immediately another attendant stepped forward, her robe shining silver. She carried a tray, with a fruit shaped like a glowing pearl. "Ambassador, taste this. It is rare, harvested only once every 10 cycles. It will show you the light of our people." Elias smiled again and accepted. The fruit burst with flavor, both sour and sweet. He nodded politely. "This is remarkable." The silver-robed attendant bowed, but she cast a quick glance toward the green-robed one. The message was clear. "My gift is greater." Elias began to see what was happening. This was no simple service. It was a duel, an unspoken competition where each attendant tried to win his favor. Soon the others joined in. One began to comb his hair gently with a crystal comb that glowed softly. Another massaged his hands with scented oils, her fingers moving in careful patterns. A third began to recite proverbs in a melodic voice, each one about honor, loyalty, and service. Elias sat quietly, allowing them to continue, but he could feel the rivalry sharpening. When one offered him something, another quickly stepped forward with something better. If one spoke a proverb, another recited one longer and more complex. The attendants never raised their voices, yet their graceful gestures had become like swords in a silent battle. Elias thought to himself, "They are not fighting me, they are fighting each other, and somehow I am the prize in the middle." As the competition grew, the Queen herself appeared. The chamber doors opened and a soft light spread across the room. The attendants dropped to their knees instantly. Elias stood and bowed deeply. The Queen of Zirathia was tall and radiant. Her robe shimmered with hundreds of tiny lights, as if stars were woven into the fabric. Her eyes glowed faintly, filled with calm power. She did not speak at first. She only watched. The attendants rose slowly, their movements trembling slightly. Now their rivalry had become even more dangerous. Every action they took would be seen by the Queen. Whoever impressed the human ambassador most would also win the Queen's notice. The duel continued. One attendant lifted a bowl of oils and began to draw shapes on Elias's arms, the patterns glowing briefly before fading. Another brought a soft cloth and brushed away the oil gently, as if correcting her rival's work. A third began to sing, her voice echoing through the chamber, filling it with strange beauty. Elias felt almost overwhelmed. He had faced dangerous missions before, but never had he been at the center of such silent conflict. The attendants' hands, voices, and gifts surrounded him, all competing for his attention. He glanced at the Queen. She remained still, her expression unreadable. She was observing carefully, perhaps to see not only how her attendants acted, but also how the human would respond. Elias decided he could not stay silent forever. He had to do something human. When the next attendant tried to place a jewel around his neck, Elias gently raised his hand. "Thank you. All of you have shown great skill. But if I may, I would like to share something from my people." The attendants froze, surprised. Even the queen tilted her head slightly. Elias stepped forward to the table where the trays were laid. He picked up one of the cups filled with nectar. He looked around at the attendants and smiled warmly. On Earth, when we gather in peace, we often share a simple ritual. We lift a cup together and drink, not in rivalry but in friendship. It reminds us that we are strongest when united. He held up the cup. "May I show you?" The queen raised her hand slightly, granting permission. The attendants hesitated, then each one picked up a cup. Elias lifted his cup high. "To harmony," he said simply. The attendants slowly echoed the gesture, their hands trembling slightly. Then, for the first time, they all drank together. The nectar shimmered in the light, and silence filled the chamber. When the attendants lowered their cups, something had changed. Their faces no longer burned with rivalry. Instead, there was a hint of wonder. They had never thought of service as something to share rather than compete over. The queen finally spoke, her voice calm and deep. "Ambassador Harper, you have brought a new vision to my hall. My attendants compete to show their devotion, yet you have reminded them that unity has strength of its own." Elias bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. It is only a simple custom from my world, but sometimes simple things carry great meaning." The queen's eyes glowed brighter for a moment. "Indeed. Your presence is proving more valuable than we imagined." The attendants bowed deeply, their rivalry quiet for now. Some glanced at Elias with new respect. Others still carried the fire of competition, but it was mixed with curiosity about the human who had turned their duel into something different. As Elias left the chamber under the queen's escort, he thought to himself, "It seems humanity's strength is not power or wealth, but the ability to turn conflict into connection." Behind him, the attendants whispered softly. Their rivalry was not gone. They still argued quietly over whose service had been noticed most, who had stood closest, who had been the first to offer. Yet now their words carried less anger and more admiration. The duel of service had not ended in victory for any one attendant. Instead, it had shown them something new, something human, and Elias Harper knew that this was only the beginning. Elias Harper walked slowly behind the queen's attendants as they guided him to the next chamber. His steps were calm, but his mind was busy. He replayed the duel of service in his head, remembering how each attendant had tried to outshine the others. For a while, their rivalry had grown so strong that it nearly turned the ritual into chaos. Yet, with one small human custom, raising a cup together, he had shifted the mood. Instead of fighting, the attendants had shared a moment of unity. It had not ended their rivalry, but it had softened it. As they moved through the glowing corridors of the palace, Elias glanced at the attendants walking near him. Their eyes were different now. Some still measured him carefully as if he were a puzzle to solve. Others looked at him with quiet curiosity, wondering what else a human could do. The queen walked ahead, silent and graceful. Her robe shimmered with soft light, and every movement carried authority. She had not spoken much, but Elias could feel her attention. She was studying him, weighing his worth not only as an ambassador but also as a symbol of humanity. They entered a vast chamber, filled with soft cushions and low tables. Light drifted down from above like falling water. At the center was a wide circle, empty and waiting. The queen turned, her eyes glowing faintly. "Ambassador Harper," she said, her voice deep and calm, "you have witnessed the rivalry of my attendants. You have also shown them a different path. Now I ask something more. Show us something from your people, not words alone, but an act. Let us see the nature of humanity. The attendants looked at Elias expectantly. Some smiled faintly, others frowned in doubt. He could feel their thoughts. What could a human possibly show that would impress the queen? Elias took a slow breath. He had not prepared for this moment, yet he understood its importance. Humanity's place among the Zyrathians could depend on what he did now. He thought about Earth, about the things that made humans unique. They did not have the glowing oils, the floating lamps, or the perfect rituals of the Zyrathians. But they had something else: creativity, adaptability, and the ability to turn simple acts into powerful meaning. Elias stepped into the circle. "Your Majesty, attendants of the Queen," he said, "on Earth we have many great traditions. Some are grand and ceremonial, but others are simple and humble. I will share one of the simple ones. It is a way we build trust and harmony." The attendants exchanged glances. Some looked unimpressed. A few tilted their heads, curious. The Queen raised her hand slightly, allowing him to continue. Elias picked up a plain cloth from one of the tables. He held it out with both hands. "This is nothing special, just a cloth. But on Earth, we often use simple things to bring people together. Please, may I have the help of one attendant?" The violet-robed attendant stepped forward. Her eyes were cautious, but she bowed and approached. Elias smiled. He folded the cloth in half, then again, shaping it into a small square. "In my world," he said, "we sometimes play games with nothing more than cloth or paper. The purpose is not to win alone, but to share laughter." He placed the folded cloth on the floor between them. Then, with quick motions, he flicked it into the air, catching it again before it touched the ground. The attendants leaned closer, surprised at the playful gesture. Elias handed the cloth to the violet-robed attendant. "Now you try. The rule is simple. Keep it in the air as long as you can." The attendant blinked, confused, but she lifted the cloth and tossed it lightly upward. It floated for a moment before falling. She caught it clumsily. The other attendants laughed softly, not mockingly, but with surprise. They had never seen her struggle with anything so simple. Elias chuckled, kindly. "Good. Now pass it to another." The violet-robed attendant handed the cloth to one wearing green. This time the green-robed attendant tossed it higher. She managed to keep it aloft 3 times before it fell. A ripple of laughter spread through the group. Soon, each attendant wanted a turn. They took the cloth one by one, tossing it into the air, trying to keep it from touching the ground. Their graceful movements, usually so precise, now became playful and clumsy. They laughed more freely than Elias had ever seen. The Queen watched in silence, but Elias noticed a faint curve at the corner of her lips. When the cloth finally returned to Elias, he stepped back. This is what humans often do. We turn simple things into games. It may seem small, but through games we build trust, friendship, and joy. Even rivals can laugh together. The chamber was quiet for a moment. Then the attendants bowed. Their expressions changed. They were not only amused, they were thoughtful. One of them spoke softly. "Ambassador, we competed fiercely to serve you. Yet in this game we found laughter together. It felt lighter than our rivalry." Another added, "We had never considered that play could be a path to honor." Elias smiled gently. "Sometimes the simplest paths are the strongest. Humans survive because we can turn hardship into cooperation. We fight, yes, but we also laugh and forgive." The Queen finally rose from her seat. Her voice carried authority, yet also warmth. "Ambassador Harper, you have shown us something unexpected. My attendants live in service, and service has always been a contest of skill. But you remind us that unity and joy are strengths no less important." She turned to her attendants. "Remember this lesson. Rivalry sharpens the hand, but harmony strengthens the spirit. From this day, let laughter be part of your service." The attendants bowed deeply. Some looked humbled, others inspired. For the first time, their rivalry seemed truly quiet. Elias felt relief, but also pride. He had not used power, wealth, or technology. He had used something deeply human, ingenuity born from simplicity. and the queen had seen its value. After the ceremony, the queen invited Elias to sit at her side for a meal. The attendants served together, their motions calmer than before. They no longer tried to outshine one another at every step. Instead, they moved with quiet cooperation. As Elias tasted the strange dishes of glowing fruit and shimmering bread, he thought about the path ahead. Humanity had entered the Zarathian palace as an unknown species, fragile compared to the grand empire, yet already they had left a mark. The queen spoke again during the meal. "Ambassador Harper, you remind me of something my people once knew long ago before pride divided us. You carry the strength of simplicity. For this, I give you my respect." Elias bowed. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I believe humans and Zyrathians can learn much from each other. We may not share the same rituals, but we share the same hearts." The queen's eyes glowed brighter. "We shall see, Ambassador. Your journey here is not finished, but today you have taken a great step." As the meal ended, the attendants whispered among themselves. No longer were they arguing over who had washed Elias's back best, or who had served him more skillfully. Instead, they spoke of the strange human game, the shared laughter, and the feeling of harmony. For the first time, they were not only rivals, they were companions in memory. Elias Harper knew then that humanity's greatest strength was not weapons, not wealth, not even knowledge. It was the ability to create connection from the simplest of acts. And in a palace of shining stars and ancient pride, that strength had found a place. The palace of the Zarathians was quiet as the twin moons rose outside. Their silver light shone through the tall crystal windows, painting long beams across the floor. Elias Harper sat alone in his guest chamber, looking out at the alien sky. It had been only a few days since his arrival, but so much had changed. He had seen the rivalry of the queen's attendants. He had felt the weight of their pride and their endless competition. And somehow, with nothing more than human habits, rituals of sharing, laughter, and play, he had shifted their hearts. But the mission was not yet complete. Tomorrow he would stand in the Hall of Stars, where the Queen and her council would decide humanity's place among the Zarathian Empire. The thought filled him with both hope and fear. He whispered to himself, "What can one human really do among giants of power?" Yet deep inside, he already knew the answer. Humans did not need to be giants, they only needed to be themselves. The next morning, the palace came alive with sound. Drums of crystal echoed down the corridors. Attendants in brilliant robes lined the walls, their eyes shining. The rivalry between them had not fully disappeared, but their steps were softer, their gazes warmer. Elias noticed it at once. They no longer tried to push past one another to stand closest to him. Instead, they walked together, guiding him with a strange new unity. The Queen waited in the Hall of Stars. It was the grandest chamber Elias had ever seen. The ceiling stretched so high that it seemed to touch the heavens. A map of constellations glowed across the dome, slowly shifting to show the endless sky. Around the Queen sat her council, tall, wise figures with jeweled robes and piercing eyes. Their faces were unreadable. Elias knew they would judge not only him, but all of humanity. The Queen raised her hand. The hall fell silent. Her voice rang out, calm and firm. "Ambassador Harper of Earth, you have walked among us. You have seen the rivalry of my attendants, and you have touched their hearts with lessons from your people. Today you stand before the council. Speak now. Why should humanity be welcomed into our empire?" All eyes turned to him. Elias felt the weight of the moment press on his shoulders. He stepped forward into the center of the hall. His voice was steady, though his heart beat fast. "Your Majesty, honored council," he began, "humanity is small compared to the Zyrathian Empire. We do not have ships that can bend stars. We do not have palaces of crystal or rituals of light. But we have something else. We have the power to connect, to turn strangers into friends and rivals into companions." He paused, letting the words sink in. The council members leaned forward slightly. On Earth, Elias continued, we learned to survive not because we were the strongest, but because we stood together. We made families, villages, and nations. We built bridges over oceans and found peace after wars. We are not perfect, but we always try again. That is humanity's strength. The Queen studied him closely. You speak of connection, Ambassador, but words are easy. Show us proof. Why should we believe humans can bring unity, when even my own attendants struggle with rivalry? Elias turned slowly. The attendants were standing at the edges of the hall watching. Their faces carried both pride and tension. He knew this was his chance. He smiled gently. Then let them answer, Your Majesty. They have already seen what humans bring. The Queen nodded. Very well. Attendants, step forward. The group of attendants moved into the hall. They looked at each other, uncertain. For so long they had competed against one another for the Queen's favor. But now they stood side by side. One attendant, the violet-robed woman, spoke first. Your Majesty, when I first met the human, I wished only to outshine my sisters. I believed service was a contest, but the human showed us another way. He made us laugh together. He turned rivalry into play. For the first time I felt joy in serving not as a rival, but as part of something greater. Another attendant added, Yes, Majesty. The human brought us peace without command or punishment. He showed us harmony with nothing more than a game. That is a power we had forgotten. A third nodded. His ways are simple, but they open the heart. If one human can do this with us, imagine what his people could do with many worlds. The hall grew quiet. The council members exchanged thoughtful glances. Elias stood still, letting the attendants speak for him. Their words carried more weight than his own. Finally, the Queen lifted her hand. Enough. The attendants bowed and stepped back. The Queen's glowing eyes returned to Elias. Her voice was steady, almost unreadable. Ambassador Harper, you have brought change into my palace. That is rare. You have shown us the strength of your people, not through force, but through spirit. She turned to the council. What say you? Shall humanity be welcomed among us? Gandanai. Council members closed their eyes, each one raising a jeweled hand when ready. One by one, their hands lifted. Some were slow, some were quick, but in the end, every hand was raised. The hall filled with a soft hum of approval. The Queen rose to her feet. Her robe shimmered like a river of light. Then it is decided. Humanity shall have a place among the Zarathian Empire. You will not be servants, nor shadows, but partners. Elias bowed deeply. Relief washed over him like a tide. He had done, and not alone, but through the shared spirit of humanity. The attendants, standing at the sides, exchanged glances. Their rivalry had not vanished, but it was no longer the same. They had learned that honor could come not only from outshining one another, but also from standing together, and for that lesson, they silently respected the human. That night, Elias returned to his chamber. He looked out again at the alien sky. This time, he felt different. He was no longer just a visitor. He was the first thread in a new bond between two great peoples. He thought of Earth. He imagined children playing simple games, families sharing meals, and friends laughing together. He realized that those small, ordinary moments were not small at all. They were humanity's true legacy, the kind of strength that could touch even the stars. Elias whispered softly, Even in the heart of an empire, a little human laughter can change everything. And far away, under the glowing constellations of the Hall of Stars, the Queen herself allowed a rare smile. She too had felt that laughter. Humanity had earned its place, not by power, but by being human. And that was enough.